Yo, what is up everybody? So we're going to do a follow-up to my last video where I talked about 5 cards that had to get significantly nerfed going into set 1 from playtesting for obviously very good reasons, as you probably saw in my last video if you watched it. So the follow-up today is we're going to look at 5 cards, asterisk 5, we're going to get into that in a moment, where we're going to look at the cards that had to get buffs going from playtesting into set 1 or throughout playtesting up until current final printings. So let's just jump into those cards. And I think there's some really interesting concepts that we're going to go into here, but we'll just jump into it. We'll get there when we get there. Starting off with Elestrals. It's a 4/1 for 1 Thunder, as we all know, but this Elestrals obviously has different art. It'd be awesome if they released like a Lost Art series with this. And it has a different ability. So instead of searching out Divines as we know it today, it searches out a 1-cost Wind Elestral. Which, yes, it's on the Voltempest side of things where Thunder and Wind is relevant, but searching out of elements not that useful in most decks, and it's got okay stats, so it got changed to, as we know today, searching for Divine Rune, which is significantly better with how powerful Divine Runes are, especially since the Divine Runes in Thunder, i.e. Zeus, are really relevant to the 2 top Thunder decks, being both Tempest, which Elestrals is part of that lore-based lineage. It goes Elestrals into Griffuse into Voltempest, and also Thunder Nexus that also wants to get Zeus out. So being that the 2 top decks in Thunder need the Divine Rune out, it significantly boosted this card's power level. It searches out Zeus, you get Griffuse out, you Nexus to Griffuse, you get your Voltempest out pretty quick and easy. So that's what it generally looks like it was designed to be for. But then the fact that Thunder Nexus is so good with the receive effects in Toxian and Astrabit, it's very nice to have just the Divine Rune Searcher when that's our best Nexus, or yeah, our best Nexus bank. I am talking correctly here. So yeah, significant buff, even though it's a not a completely different ability, it's still searching. Searching for a 1-cost Wind Elestral, Aeolus does it better, even if it's a little bit more expensive. So yeah, significant buff on the Elestrals, and it's pretty significant to the meta now. So this change in playtesting really changed how we play the game today. Like 2 of the top decks basically you run 2 or 3 Elestrals to find the Zeuses faster. So extremely relevant change. The next card, or I should say cards here, that I want to go over are 3 water 1-costs, being Krakid, Sluggle, and Typhlant. All these cards started as only on normal cast triggers, or in our old, how we used to say, normal enchant triggers. So we used to use normal enchant instead of normal cast, so if I say normal cast or normal enchant, just know I mean a normal cast. They used to only be a normal cast, which means if you found them with, say, a Foamy, they wouldn't trigger their abilities, which made water feel really clunky. So this change not necessarily was made to buff water, but rather to make water feel more user-friendly, I feel. I don't know the exact reason for all the buffs and changes, but when we were playing with Foamy, and these cards were all normal cast triggers, you find them and you don't do anything with them, so you just always would just find another Foamy. Maybe find a Mistation. We had a little bit of playtesting with Mistation before these cards got changed, but you never really did anything with that. Like you just Foamy into Foamy into Foamy, maybe go for a 2-drop on your next turn. Now that when Foamy gets destroyed, you can find one of these 3 cards and they trigger on any cast, including a special cast, makes these significantly less clunky to use in your deck and feel a lot better to play. So your Foamy dies, you go find a Sluggle, regen 3, ascend it into like a Capricorn, and then pull the Sluggle back in when that Capricorn lands, stuff like that. So it just really made water feel significantly more cohesive by giving them more special cast triggers to use on Foamy, to use on Capricorn, maybe a Rise From on the Sluggle, stuff like that. It really cleaned up how water played and just made it feel more intuitive to play, because you didn't have to keep reading normal trigger, special trigger, etc. Just you Foamy into these, have a great time. So significant change, if not necessarily for power levels, just for playability. It was really frustrating to realize that Sluggle didn't trigger on a special cast and Krakid didn't trigger on a special class, so what's Foamy doing? Now Foamy actually really has a home to do things other than just stall. You can get a little proactive or a little recover or use a little bit of a water toolbox now with Foamy. So these 3 cards getting literally a 1-word change basically significantly changed how water felt, and that was really good in playtesting. So I appreciated that change a lot actually. especially if you saw my conversation about talking about how much I played Aphros in the last video. Yeah, getting water changes to make it feel more cohesive and more make sense was nice to have. Next up, we're going to take a look at original Pantera. If you look at the original Pantera announcement video back like a year and a half ago at this point, its original ability said that if it was destroyed in battle, who's destroying Pantera in battle? Like, that's what most of the community really, like, we looked at Pantera, it's like, what are we doing to this Pantera that we're going to destroy it in battle? Maybe use a tsunami and then attack it? Like, that ability is never going to work. It's basically just a 15 vanilla beater at 3 cost that you can get out pretty quick. Which on its own is not terrible, but it just felt awkward because then, hey, I could just Earthquake it. I could use Boom Bat on it. I can Poison Tipped Arrow it and not feel bad. So now it got changed to what we know today of if it's destroyed by a card ability or card effect, you special cast all your Twinges and Hydras instead of by battle. Which makes less sense on the lineage path, but when it's the biggest Celestial and strongest Celestial in the game, I don't think it should care about combat. So you think, yeah, caring about being destroyed by a card effect significantly makes your opponent less willing to just pop it with a card effect, which I think is significantly better for the card and how it's designed. And your opponent can still Tsunami and attack it, and that's probably the best way to get rid of it, but still, Pantera would have been honestly like significantly weaker if it was destroyed by battle to do that ability. Now you kind of have to think about, do I want to Earthquake that Pantera and let them possibly get out Twindras and Hydrakes, and now building the deck you can kind of mind game your opponent where you can run one Twindra, one Pantera to mind game your opponent to make them think you have more of them in your deck. When you don't, to save that space for other things, and they don't want to pop the Pantera because they think you're going to get more Hydrakes and Twindras out, when in reality you run like 3 Hydrakes and 1 Twindra just to get the Pantera out, and your opponent has to play around the possibility that you have 2 more Twindra and can pop a bunch of 5 beaters into play off the Pantera dying. So it significantly changed how Pantera would play and how it feels to play it and how your opponent has to play against it. So it's a really good change, and I really like this change. Now as we get into the next couple of cards, I don't think people are going to always agree that these are good changes. But before we get into those changes, as always, hey, I appreciate if you guys like and subscribe to the video. We're going to jump into the next 2 cards. They are actually like, these are going to be really divisive. These 2 cards are going to be really divisive, so buckle in. Alright, Gorgon's Gaze. Now you'll see I have the current text of the card in front of you. And that's because Gorgon's Gaze didn't get a ton of changes to its functionality by changing the card to be different or buff it. It got changed a bunch for the awkward reason of it had to fit the rules better. So Gorgon's Gaze, when we first started using it, was kind of bad. It only stopped abilities from activating. It didn't negate abilities currently trying to chain. So if you played a Sluggle, it was already too late to negate the Sluggle recovery, stuff like that. So honestly, Gorgon's Gaze, everyone kind of laughed at me at first. It was a really bad card originally. We didn't really play it that much. I don't think it stopped attacks after the attack was declared. It had to be proactive. It originally had to be cast in the draw phase before we got playtested to it, which made the wording really awkward, and that's why it didn't really do anything that it was supposed to do. It got changed a bit during playtesting. And then it started becoming, okay, now it can stop attacks when the attacks are declared. It still didn't negate abilities yet because we didn't have negate really ruled out yet with suppress, and negate and suppress were still kind of combined into the same keyword, which made negating an ability just removing the ability from the card but not actually negating it from the chain. And then the rules changed again, and then all of a sudden now it's negating, suppressing, can stop an attack after the attack is declared but before battle commences, and do all this. It became this just giant like catch-all for Elestrals, when previously it just didn't do what it was supposed to do. It used to be able to stop Ascensions, now it can't stop Ascension, so I guess that's something that it can't do anymore. But yeah, it was a really crazy catch-all of a card, or it is now, and it used to be just horrible because of how the rules were written. Now with the rules all tidied up, the last big change to the rules was partially because of how complicated Gorgon's Gaze made certain game states when you casted Gorgon's Gaze. So that's a significant reason as to why the rules are changed. So part of this card isn't here because it changed significantly, but because it had to significantly change the rules to work. And I think that is completely relevant when we're talking about things that got buffed. So this buffed the rules, not itself, and by buffing the rules, it buffed itself. Is that circular logic? Probably, but yeah, Gorgon's Gaze went from being pretty awful to now it's a staple 3 of in every deck, and really, really good. And yeah, everyone runs it in competitive. Everyone needs 3 of in competitive. Generally, most people run 3, some people run 2, but that's besides the point. It's a powerful card now when it started as basically almost useless because everything it wanted to do, it couldn't do at the right timing. So you had to always basically cast it well beforehand in the draw phase or whatnot. It just wasn't a functional card as it should have been. And now it's Gorgon's Gaze. I don't need to tell you anymore about Gorgon's Gaze. Alright, and last but not least, and I know when you see this card, you're just going to just jaw drop like, why did this card need a buff? This card's a scourge on the entire game. It is probably the best card in the game. What was Elestrals thinking? And there's actually a lot of nuance there. So I'll show you the card here. It's Astrabit. You'll see the original Astrabit only had 4 defense. It also got a slight buff with the definition change of look, no longer forcing you to reveal the card. But it went from 4 defense, which is obviously very outable, to 5 defense. And that is significant, just like we spoke about with Titanisdog last video getting a nerf from 5 to 4. Astrabit went from 4 to 5, and it basically, in that one change, became one of the best cards in the game. You splash it for card consistency, you play it in Thunder for Nexus payoffs. It's just really powerful and just that consistency edge. So why did it get buffed? And that's a really complex issue, and the big answer is basically Thunder wasn't seeing any competitive play in playtesting. Outside of Sonicord, because counter runes are a thing, no one was playing Thunder. Like, even Voltempest wasn't very consistent or usable because you had no way to stick the board on turn 1 with Thunder because everything had 4 attack or 4 defense, and 5 attack Elestrals are in every other element. So it's kind of core to Thunder that its 1 costs are pretty powerful ability-wise, but stat-wise are bad. And that's pretty core to Thunder, and then the Thunder aggressive cards become their 2s and their 3s. Which is unique to Thunder. A lot of the other elements don't have that game plan there. A little bit of water, you could say, actually. But, so Thunder doesn't have any 5 attack Elestrals. It had no 5 defense Elestrals. You play Ryceros defensively, and your opponent just runs it over with a Necruff. Like, Thunder struggled because it had no way to stick anything on board. So something needed to get changed, either to 5 attack or 5 defense. And I think if you look at it, where, well, what if you gave an Elestral on Thunder 5 attack? Then you're looking at what? A element with really good attack stat, Elestral, destruction effects, control effects. That probably would have been too much, so obviously it looks like they decided to buff Astrabit instead. I guess you could have buffed Ryceros, but I think if we saw Ryceros getting a buff to 5 defense, and I believe Dan has mentioned that when he first started playing, before he even announced Elestrals, Ryceros was at 5 defense, and you could never get over it, because 5 defense plus basically giving things summoning sickness meant it just couldn't get attacked over. Ever on turn 1, which isn't super healthy, so that was probably out of the picture. So then I guess your only other defensive Elestral in Thunder to go after is Astrabit. I mean, maybe you could have changed Amput stats, or I don't know. Yeah, there's not really many other, like, you don't give that ability to Boombat because then Boombat's too bulky. There's nothing else in Thunder to buff to get it to there without it being already known to be either too powerful, or maybe you could have changed Elechik stacks to a 1/5 and search Zeus, but then you have the same issue. Consistency card plus big defense. So no matter what you chose, Thunder needed help, and I guess Astrabit is what they landed on, because what else are you going to pick in Thunder? That's a really significant question, and probably something that really had to get thought about to be answered, of how do you help Thunder without either completely changing a card or nerfing something, like, or rather, sorry, nerfing everything else. And the answer was pick a card like Astrabit that was seeing consistent play but not everywhere and just giving it one defense. So now it replaces itself and its defensive body, and all of a sudden, poof, Thunder top tier. It wasn't that simple. Like, Sparky got a few back and forth, and it got landed on the select and discard and stuff, but yeah. Astrabit got a buff, and now it's one of the best cards in the game, and Thunder was one of the best elements in the game, and it really only happened because Elechick became a search, and Rabbit got one defense. That's crazy. Like, Thunder, I know a lot of people didn't playtest, like early playtest Thunder, etc. But yeah, it's crazy because Thunder was probably considered the worst element in playtesting for the longest time, which is crazy to hear. And it's just literally tuning two small quick knobs, just poof, Thunder top tier. That's crazy. It's a little bit more complex than that. But yeah, significant changes only to two major cards in Thunder, and just, yeah, bam, top tier. it's like, looking back on it, it's like, man, that's something very, very interesting to think about. So yeah, that is going to be the end of the video here, and I appreciate you guys for sticking around. What are you guys' thoughts on all these changes that happened during playtesting? I know a lot of people lack the context as to why things got changed, and hopefully some of these videos gave you that context, but it's really interesting to think about. And this video probably ended up a bit longer than my last one because why cards got buffed, I think, is significantly more interesting but mundane. I guess it's counterintuitive, but it's harder to see why a card got a buff, especially when you see a card get buffed and then all of a sudden be the best card of the game, kind of overnight. So interesting to think about. I'll see you guys in the next video, and if you have any thoughts about all these card changes from playtest to now, and there's a few things I didn't go over. There's a lot of cards. Basically, every card got changed somewhere. If you like more of this, let me know. Like, subscribe, etc. Tell me in the comments what you think, and see you guys in the next one. Peace.